In today's show, Regina turns risotto into a scrumptious appetizer you won't soon forget. Feta stuffed mushrooms add a little zest to the world of vegetable appetizers. Regina investigates the many uses and history of Parmesan cheese, and wine expert David Berkeley makes his wine selection of the week.
I found over the years that the most difficult aspect of being a vegetarian was when it came to the entertainment scene, particularly hors d'oeuvres. Now, the standard fare that either I would trot out or someone else would present for my benefit at a dinner party was crudités, little mini carrots, little bits of cucumber, and ranch dip. And that's pretty much as far as it went. Well, today we're going to cure all of that, although it sounds like you had some pretty humble beginnings on the hors d'oeuvre scene yourself.
Everybody probably had the same sort of thing. Maybe this was a 70s, 80s type of thing. Crinkle cut potato chips and French onion dip right out of the plastic container.
No, that's a classic. That was the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I think there are still people that do this, and we're in 2000.
Easy,
actually,
cheap,
that was
crunchy.
one of my very favorite hors d'oeuvres when I was 8.
Yeah, that was high class.
Sorry. What do you have to have a couple standard favorites that you take to parties?
Oh, Vienna sausages, with...
Vienna sausages and barbecue dip. Vienna, I'm sorry.
I like vegetable-based things. They're crunchier, they're usually lighter, maybe chilled or something like that. There's a lot. Okay. I mean, it's all over the place.
So you would be just as happy bringing a vegetable-based dish than chicken or something. Yeah. Good, because we have a couple really nice ones today, and you're going to help me with them, okay? Oh. One of them, the first one is a risotto cake. And for the most part, risotto is a very simple Italian dish, and it does not need a lot of dolling up. It's fabulous just with the simple ingredients, a little tiny bit of butter, arborio rice, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and of course, Parmigiano Reggiano cheese or Grana Padano, whichever you prefer, some onions. Oftentimes I'll saute shallots. This time we're doing a very, very light saute on some fresh green onions. And then this is a little different. It gets a little bit of crunch from some salted and roasted cashew nuts. It's wonderful.
That's the crunchy part.
Very elegant, simple, and the nice thing about this one is you can prepare it in advance.
Do you put any dribble sauce over it or anything like that?
You don't need to.
Really?
You can if you want to make a sauce for it. But the thing I like about a lot of Italian cuisine, and this dish included, is that the ingredients speak for themselves. You just leave them alone, nice, crisp, fresh textures and flavors, and you don't have to do anything to them. You can make it up 3 or 4 days in advance and keep it around and just...
So then do you reheat them before you're ready to serve them?
They aren't a them yet. You just... What it is it's the rice with the ingredients in a bowl. You just leave it that way. Once we mix all this together, you leave it in a bowl in just an airtight container, and then you form the patties and saute them as needed.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're wonderful. That way you can have elegant hors d'oeuvres before dinner at night, and you've taken care of your carbohydrate dish at the same time. So with all rice, with risotto, you have to start out with arborio rice. It's very important. If you go to the grocery store and ask for risotto, they'll be confused. No, not minute rice. It has a very specific texture, and also it's a process of cooking. Risotto is more of a process. So you want to use this rice from the Po Valley, which is in northern Italy. It's a short grain, looks kind of like a pearl rice. Let's see if we get close up on this. See? And of course, I always cook risotto in a little bit of vegetable broth for additional flavor. You can use water. I just
got some water off to the side.
I have water off to the side, and once we get to the point where it needs rehydration because it needs constant babysitting, as we know, then I'll start using water. But let's add the rice. We're adding 3/4 cup of arborio rice to this.
That's what's different between risotto and regular rice. Regular rice, you never check. Risotto, you got to check all the time.
You check and you stir, and it's supposed to have a sticky consistency, unlike a flaky rice. This is not something you would do in a rice cooker, in other words. It wouldn't work. Yeah, you got to keep it that way. Well, as you know, this is going to take a little time, 25-30 minutes, in order for the rice to soften up, and it's not all that interesting watching a boiling pot. So we're going to go on a little field trip where Luigi over at the Italian market is going to explain the difference between the different types of Parmesan cheeses. I'm here with Luigi Vello at the Italian Importing Mercato in Sacramento, and we're talking a little bit about cheese, a little bit about life, because Luigi's love affair with food and with life started a long time ago in Italy, in the region that Venice, where Venice is.
Exactly.
What's it, Veneto?
Veneto.
Veneto region, with grandma and a jackass and a cart. Yes. You can fill in the rest of the story.
Well, I did. When I was a small child, my grandmother and I would go from one mercato to another, which mercatos are outdoor marketplace.
Yeah, like a little farmer's market.
She had a jackass, and a cart.
She'd pick you up on
And
the
he
cart.
picked me up on a cart. And her only wish in life was, I hope I don't die before the jackass and my grandson.
She made it obviously before her grandson. What happened to the jackass?
He actually passed away before she passed away.
that must have been a sad
it was
day, but
quite lost.
You delivered on weekends, everybody getting ready to do their baking on Saturdays and such. And then obviously along the way you fell in love with cheeses. That's why you're in this business, selling beautiful Italian foods and cheeses to people. And we need some clarity here on the cheeses because it's getting very confusing out there. Now, you can tell us the difference between, let's start with the pecorino up front. Tell us what's different about the pecorino here.
Well, the pecorino is made from 100% sheep milk.
That also is Romano?
That is Pecorino Romano, which means that it's made in the area of Rome or south of Rome. Okay.
So whenever you see Romano, then that doesn't necessarily mean it's a Pecorino Romano. It doesn't necessarily mean sheep's milk then.
No,
Only if
exactly.
it says Pecorino
It
Romano.
has to say pecorino.
Okay.
Pecorino meaning of sheep.
Of sheep.
Okay.
Let's go over here now to the dry jack. That's one that you don't see really used a lot, and I'm not sure why. It does have a little milder flavor to it, but let's talk about dry jack.
Dry jack is one of the first cheeses that were produced in California, believe it or not, by immigrants from Italy, which they wanted to imitate the Parmigiano that they had in Italy. Unfortunately, the immigrants were very poor and could not produce a very high quality cheese as they did back in Italy. So they, out of jack cheese, which was produced locally, they aged it for about 3 months on up and produce a grating cheese called dry jack.
Dry jack, and it's a really gold in color. It's a little bit kind of leathery almost, and just has a little sharper taste and stronger taste than regular Monterey Jack cheese, for example. And now we come to the Grand Duchess or Duke. And tell us how we say it correctly, because I say it wrong every time.
It's Parmigiano Reggiano.
Reggiano, not Reggiano. Reggiano.
Reggiano.
I mean, this is considered the main premier Italian grating cheese. But what makes this so special?
Well, Parmigiano Reggiano is produced in an area near Bologna, which is controlled by a government board to produce this fine Parmesan cheese.
This big block here is the Grana Padano. What's the difference between the Reggiano and the Grana Padano?
Okay, the Grana Padano is, this particular cheese is produced in the Po Valley and is very similar in taste to the Reggiano, except that it's not aged as long.
And one of them that's also often used almost interchangeably is the Asiago.
Okay. Exactly.
So now what's the difference? Tell the difference between these three then. This is certainly, to me, has the most pungent flavor. This is very similar, but just a little bit softer on the tongue. This is even softer yet.
Yes, it's also cheese that can be used both for grating on your macaroni or your pasta, as well as for eating.
So when a recipe calls for a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese, you know, and it can be any type of cuisine calling for that, can you use all of these interchangeably or only this family?
Only the family of Parmesan, which is made from cow's milk as opposed to sheep milk.
Luigi, thank you so much for your time today, and it's so hard to come in this market and walk out with without a bag full of some really yummy goods.
Well,
this is a very tempting place.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Alrighty, I hope you enjoyed that little visit with Luigi. The risotto is done now, and what we're going to do is put it in a bowl. Chris, could you please heat up the skillet because I need to do a quick little flash saute, and then I'll give that to you. Thank you. At this point, while this is nice and hot, we'll add the cheese. And in this case, we are using the Reggiano, which is the recommendation of Luigi for this dish, and it gives a really nice sharp tang to it as well. We have about 3/4 of a cup to a cup here. It's getting a lot of its flavor from that, so you don't want to scrimp on the Parmesan cheese. And in just a moment, we'll be ready to saute the green onions. And we'll do a quick little saute in butter. And the main thing about butter, as I mentioned in just about every program, I don't like to heat oils. We're going to have a little bit of an exception here, although you don't want to get the butter to the point where it's really smoking. And certainly with oils, you never want to use an oil to the point where it's smoking, which is what most sauteing calls for. But we're going to put a little bit of butter in and then very quickly put this in because you're starting to get moisture out of the onions, which keeps the temperature of the butter cooled down a little bit too. And this will just take about, 60 seconds, 60 to 90 seconds at the max. Just enough to soften them up a bit and take a little bit of the sting out of the white portion of the green onion. And then Chris, in a moment here, I'm going to have you help me assemble these. I think the rice is cooled off enough that we can put it in our hands. Why don't you put the nuts in there? Because once these onions go in, we're ready to start forming patties, and we're going to plop it right back in the same pan. This ceramic pan heats really evenly. I like it for sauteing these little risotto cakes. Okay, Chris, it's time to get our hands
That doesn't
dirty.
even look like rice anymore.
Not really, not after you get all this into it.
How big a one do you make?
Looks like about a quarter of a cup worth, if that, maybe 3 tablespoons.
Small crab cake size.
Yeah.
Oh, oop, I said the wrong word, crab.
I can handle it. Make these little patties, and then I just brush a little bit of butter in the bottom. I have my little brush that's been burnt up on saute pans many times. I use that just to keep it from sticking. There we go.
Let me see how mine looks.
Yeah, we'll try
Not
that.
quite as good as yours.
There we go. Just over a kind of a medium or medium-low heat, just pat it down a little bit so it becomes solid, and then let it turn golden on one side, and we're going to flip them over, do the other side, and they're ready to serve. And we have the last of the risotto cakes coming off, and they're looking perfect. A little crunchy and golden on the outside, and
So good.
yum. So in today's herb segment, we're going to be talking about specific ailments and how we can use teas to reduce some of the symptoms. If not completely wipe out the ailment and the source of the bug, at least relieve some of the symptoms. Is that more or less what we're going for here, as a symptomatic cure?
Absolutely, and in some cases, you know, if you nip it in the bud, you may not get as bad off,
That's
like with
true.
a cold.
So let's talk about specific ailments and symptom relievers here.
Good. Well, we have cold and flu, which is always a symptomatic problem that people have. And if you get a sore throat, ginger and licorice, this is a throat formula that has wild cherry bark in it and licorice root, and really soothes the throat. So it will help right away with that sore throat. If the cold goes any further, you're real congested, this is eucalyptus. And makes a great cup of tea, especially if combined with licorice and sometimes ginger. You know, combinations work together very well.
Right, which is
with
what we
symptoms.
end up with in the tea bags, which is really convenient in that sense, because it's difficult to know what ratios to put together. But you can do it. You can get books on herbs and figure out how to get the ground herbs and make your own remedies too.
That's right, and you can draw on a wealth of information from cultures all over the world, and that's what a good formulation will do.
Let's look at this. We're talking about chamomile. I love it.
Chamomile flowers.
Such a pleasant, soft-tasting tea.
Right, that's the most popular herb tea in the whole world is chamomile.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
And that's used for relaxation?
Relaxation, also digestion. Very good for digestion. So you have any digestive problems, great to drink chamomile. Also peppermint after dinner if you have digestive problems. But if you use it for relaxation and you still can't sleep, passion flower is another herb.
Oh, is that right?
That will help you
And
sleep.
so would you find this in one of the herbal packets or the tea
Yes,
bags,
in
the combination? Okay, and that's to go sleepy by.
That's to go to sleep at night.
Now this one is an interesting one. We're going to talk about something that's a little delicate, just digestive. If you're a little bit stopped up, okay, and you want to help your elimination process flow on, the root of almost all of those laxative-based tea combinations is senna. Isn't that correct?
Senna leaf, this grows in India.
And people are under the impression that because something is herbal, that it's mild. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, senna is a stimulant laxative, and
Yes.
if you take a gram of that and steep it in water, it will have a very powerful stimulant laxative effect, probably even before overnight if you use that much of it. So you have to find formulas with senna that are carefully dosed and that are properly blended with herbs like licorice root or herbs that help to counter the effects of any gripping that might happen in the intestine. So as you said, herbs can be safe, but they're strong medicines.
Yeah,
so
they're really
something like
potent.
senna, you have to read the directions and you have to buy it from a company that knows how to blend it.
Very good. Well, anything else? We have, it's interesting, all the different blends here. This is the laxative Nighty Night Thinko, and we have Digest, like you said, with the peppermints, and detox. Just very quickly, can you give us a note about detoxing?
Yeah, detoxing, it's good to use herbs daily to help your liver, support your liver, and a good detox blend will use Gynostema, Schizandra, that's an oriental herb, but it will help the liver flow. So when you're detoxing, you've got to take care of your liver.
And it's true, and all good health starts with the basic organic functioning of the body, the digestive system. So got to keep that nice and cleaned out, detoxified. So thanks again for joining us. It's so enlightening every time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're back. We're going to make some portobello mushrooms, just a little tiny bit more of that. Mushroom caps with some
olive oil and
goat
balsamic
cheese and chives and little crunchy stuff on top. Wonderful hors d'oeuvre. A lot of times I'll order these stuffed mushroom caps for my entree because I'm kind of light eater in the evening. What we want to do here is put a little bit, we want some flavor in there and we want to keep this moist. A little bit of olive oil and balsamic vinegar. It's non-exact.
Balsamic goes great with portobellas.
It's fabulous. But we don't want it too heavy on the balsamic because it gets a little acidic tasting. Brush the inside and the outside, and then we're going to set these aside while we make the filling. Okay, let's start making the filling. This is based on a ricotta.
Ricotta.
Ricotta, which we've explained to you before, is very high in protein, extremely low in fat. You can get non-fat or you can get partially skimmed. And then a little bit of feta cheese, of course. Is
Feta.
Feta. We're doing this potato thing again, Chris. Anyway, we're putting a little bit of feta in our feta, and we don't want to, which is the goat cheese, we don't want to put too much because this is very strong in flavor. And we'll be putting some other subtle kinds of flavors with it in just a moment. And then thinning it out with a bit of milk. You can use any kind of milk, be it a regular dairy product, or soy or nut milks or rice milk, doesn't matter, it just thins it out. Let's get this thing clamped down a bit. Actually, let's open it.
Got a fruit processor?
Yeah. See, this particular one has a small bowl. This is a very small amount of filling we're doing. We're just doing enough for a couple servings. So I'm not even going to put this in the big bowl. We'll just leave it right up here. And then we have, about a third to half as much feta as we do ricotta. And then a little bit of milk, and then we'll just adjust the amount of milk as this comes along. You want it kind of spreadable and light and fluffy. You don't want a heavy mixture. And then, remember,
More salt even with feta?
Yeah, because the ricotta has no salt in it at all. So just gonna bump up the amount of salt a little bit, not too much, okay? See what happens here. See what we're getting for a, yeah, thanks. And you want this to be whipped up.
So you want it smooth or cottage cheese? No,
Smooth.
smooth, okay.
It's just right,
Yep, nice.
not too goaty.
If
Took me a while to get used to the goat cheese thing, but you know, it did.
I liked it from the beginning.
I really didn't like it from the beginning, but I've gotten used to it, and now I actually like it.
That's why.
You like Greek. I usually use a French feta, which is French feta. If you're looking at fetas for this particular recipe, if you like a really strong feta flavor, then you'll want to use Greek feta. Otherwise, go with French, which is not as strong tasting and it's not as salty. It's just a milder version, so I tend to use a lot of French feta cheese. Now, to add the aromatic flavors.
Chives.
Chopped fresh chives. And you can put as much or as little as you like in. I don't really measure, although you can get the exact recipe content online on my website on PBS, but I tend to just do everything by feel anyway. May I have that little spoon, please?
I'll give you a clean one.
Thank you. We cannot have double dipped because nobody's dipped yet. There we go. See that? Just kind of light and fluffy.
And if we do double dip, it's just you and me.
It's just you and me. Don't tell me you never do it at home. Come on. Although viewers get very upset. We have had some email when I've double dipped, so I try to watch it. Okay, we're just going to spread this around the mushroom cap. And then, Chris, I need you to do this little job for me. This requires some breadcrumbs, and then I'm going to turn you on to a brand new product that I just love. I've been using quite a bit of it. They're called little nut nuggets. First of all, can you make some breadcrumbs? People think they have to, fairly fine. You don't have to rush out to the store to buy breadcrumbs when they're called for in a recipe. Just take a piece of bread and bake it in the oven until it's golden and crispy, and then do what Chris is doing. A rolling pin works as well. And we'll use the rest of this to make a nice spread over the top of the portobello. And then I'm going to tell you about these little nut nuggets. There's this company I discovered that makes the most beautiful nut oils and nut-related products. And in fact, in another show, I'm going to be showing you the use of some nut flours in with regular wheat flour. That'll be in a show where I'm making crepes. Smooth this out a little bit. But these are the little nut nuggets.
Those are nuts, or they?
Those are nuts, and you can get them in just about any variety of nut. In this case, in this recipe, I'm calling for pistachio. And you can see here, it almost looks granulated. So we're going to make a crunchy topping here and using these little pistachio buds. These work really well. They're just dry enough that they blend really well with the breadcrumb, for example. And then to make sure it's not too dried out, we're going to drizzle just a little bit of melted butter over them. In fact, I need to go one of those little, I'll use your little bowl over here. Okay. Let's see. It's okay. A little finer. Just stomp on it a couple more times and we'll about be ready to go here.
I'll put some elbow behind it.
Okay. So we're putting some little nut nuggets, pistachio nut nuggets, although you can use any kind. In fact, you don't have to go to far corners of the earth to find these products. If you have some nuts around, it can be walnuts, it can be pecans, anything. Just go ahead and chop it up finely and toast it a little bit to get some of the moisture out. There we go. Mix about equal portions of these. There we go. In fact, I'd like a little thicker, crunchier topping on it. Then we have some melted butter. I just mix it with my fingers. Just enough to get a real crunch on it after it bakes.
Should it stick together or still be kind of loose?
No, it's kind of somewhere in between. Just enough butter to coat everything on this one. And then I'm going to sprinkle this around the top. Have you ever had this?
No, it's brand new for me.
Good. I thought I kind of, invented this, but there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to cuisine, is there? Just when you think you've come up with something original, it's not even.
Just different ways of putting together things.
Okay. This is going in the oven at 375.
Just as is, like that?
Just like that, for about 15 minutes. We're going to go to David Berkeley, who will tell us what he would pair with each of these appetizers today.
Regina, a couple of these appetizers have major flavors that are almost more consistent with a first course. We're talking about risotto cakes with cashews, portobello mushrooms. I usually like red wines with these sort of flavors. And the spicy bean dip, well, maybe a white wine or even beer. So what do you serve with all of them? How about a rosé? Now, I will confess, I'm a bit of a champion of dry rosé. Not because I think that rosés are great wines, but because sometimes they're the perfect wine for the dish, the situation, or the season. I'll give you an example. Not so long ago, we were invited for an alfresco dinner. We were asked to bring an appetizer and a wine to go with it. We decided to take olives de Provence, mixed olives, niçoise and picholine that are marinated in olive oil with herbs de Provence and lemon zest, and a vegetable pâté, and a dry rosé from Provence. Now, I think some people were a little surprised to see this lowly rosé in this situation, but by the evening's end, with the foods, the situation around the pool, the hot evening, that chilled rosé was the hit of the evening. So when you're looking for one of these dry rosés, you can try for maybe a wine from the Loire Valley, certainly a wine from the south of France like a Provence rosé, or maybe one of the delicious California rosés that are made from the Rhone Valley grapes.
Well, this certainly is a far cry from potato chips and French onion dip, I'll tell you that.
Should I take that as a compliment?
Very much so.
Very good. On that note, I think we can say santé until next time.
To find out more about Regina's Vegetarian Table, visit our PBS website at pbs.org.